All right, let's dive in. This one's got me daydreaming about wraparound porches and lemonade. We're tackling farmhouse interior design, and wow, you really went all out with the source material. Magazines, blog posts, historical essays. Looks like you want to go way beyond just the look, huh?
You're right. It's much more than just shiplap and barn doors.
Yeah.
It's a style with the rich history, and what I find really interesting is how it blends practicality and nostalgia. We'll uncover what makes that combination so powerful and how it's been adapted for today's homes.
Okay, so I'm curious about the history. One article mentioned that early farmhouse design wasn't really design at all.
Exactly. Think about it. Those early farmhouses were built out of necessity by settlers and farmers using whatever materials were readily available.
So we're talking like timber straight from their land.
Yep. Stone from local quarries, sturdy iron for the hardware. It was all about function.
Makes you see those big farmhouse tables in a whole new light, huh? Were they really meant for large family meals back then?
Oh, absolutely. They were work surfaces too, prepping food, mending clothes, you name it. And those durable floors, they had to withstand a lot of foot traffic. Every detail served a purpose.
Amazing how those functional elements became the design features we love today. But the style evolved, right? This book mentions Shaker and European cottage influences.
Right. As communities grew and people traveled, different design ideas mixed with that core farmhouse aesthetic. You started to see regional variations like French country with its elegant touches or the more rustic English cottage. But no matter what, comfort and simplicity remained at the heart of farmhouse design.
Which brings us to its recent popularity explosion, right? Everyone seems to want a bit of that farmhouse charm.
It's true. In the late 20th century, there was this growing fascination with a romanticized view of rural life, amplified by, renovation shows, social media, the whole nine yards. Everyone wanted a taste of that farmhouse life, and it's just kept evolving from there.
All right, I'm itching to get into the specifics. What actually makes a space feel farmhouse? Where do we even begin?
The materials are the foundation. Think reclaimed wood, exposed beams, natural stone, brick, and metal accents too. Wrought iron, galvanized steel, often repurposed from old farm equipment.
So it's like bringing that history right into your home?
Exactly. And the key is to let those materials shine. Exposed brick walls, rough-hewn beams, reclaimed wood, used for everything. It creates warmth and texture that you just don't get with modern materials.
It's funny, I never thought of reclaimed wood as luxurious, but in this context, it feels almost elevated. And then there's that color palette. So much emphasis on those calming neutrals.
Whites, grays, taupes. They create this serene backdrop that lets those rich textures and the warmth of the wood really shine through. Pops of color, you'll see them in the accessories, but they're always used sparingly.
Gotcha. So when I picture farmhouse furniture, I'm thinking big, sturdy tables, mismatched chairs, a comfy slip-covered sofa. Am I on the right track?
You're getting it. Comfort, durability, and a sense of history are key here. Big dining tables, ideally reclaimed wood or with a distressed finish, maybe paired with mismatched chairs or a bench.
I love those mismatched chairs. It just feels so relaxed and welcoming. Like it's okay for things to not be perfectly matched.
That's the spirit of farmhouse design, embracing those imperfections. And for seating, slip-covered sofas and armchairs are staples. They're comfy, easy to clean, and that slightly rumpled look just adds to their charm. Fabrics,
Right.
linen or cotton, muted hues, keeping with a neutral scheme.
Can just picture myself curled up on one of those sofas with a good book. Speaking of books, where does storage fit in? I imagine farmhouses need to be pretty practical.
Storage is essential, and it's done in a way that contributes to the aesthetic. Open shelving to display pretty pottery or vintage finds, sideboards and hutches, often with distressed finishes or made from reclaimed wood, perfect for linens, tableware, all those essentials.
So it's tidy, but in a stylish way. What about antiques? They seem like a big part of the farmhouse aesthetic.
Oh, absolutely. Antiques and vintage pieces are the heart and soul of farmhouse design. Imagine an old farm table with all its nicks and scratches, telling stories of years gone by, or vintage enamelware, adding pops of color to a neutral kitchen.
It's like each piece has its own history, and when you bring them together, they create this layered personal space.
That's it exactly. These pieces bring so much character and authenticity. They're conversation starters, and they tell the story of the people who live there.
Okay, so we've got materials, colors, furniture. What about those finishing touches, those decorative accents that pull it all together?
Think textiles, greenery, wall art, and lighting, each element chosen to enhance that cozy farmhouse feel. Textiles like woven rugs, cozy throws, pillows, and natural fabrics like linen or cotton, adding warmth and texture.
I love that. Bringing in those natural textures, it just makes sense with that whole connection to nature. What about greenery? I bet that's a big part of it too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Fresh flowers, herbs in pots, even branches from the yard, they all bring this vibrancy to the farmhouse look. Like, a simple bouquet of wildflowers in a vintage pitcher on the table, or basil and rosemary by the kitchen window.
Yeah. Bring the outdoors in. Makes sense for a style rooted in, well, rural living. What about wall art? What kind of pieces fit in here?
Farmhouse wall art, it's usually a blend of the practical and sentimental. You might find vintage signs with that charming typography, old windows repurposed as art, or even framed botanical prints. It's all about pieces that have a story, a connection to the past.
I can totally picture it. Old family photos and those rustic wood frames, maybe a vintage map or some antique needlework.
Exactly. It's all about creating that sense of history and personality. And we can't forget lighting. That plays a huge role in setting the mood.
Okay, so what kind of lighting works well in a farmhouse setting?
Lanterns, chandeliers with that rustic or industrial feel, even exposed bulb fixtures. You'll see pendant lights over kitchen islands, sconces flanking a fireplace, maybe even string lights on the porch.
So it's more about creating a warm glow rather than something harsh or overly modern.
Yeah, good way to put it. The lighting should enhance that cozy atmosphere. Now, one thing that's really interesting about farmhouse style is, well, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. There are so many variations.
So it's not just copying a look, it's about taking those core elements and, giving them your own spin.
Exactly. Like, let's take modern farmhouse. It's become so popular. You've got those classic elements like shiplap, exposed beams, but it's paired with cleaner lines, a brighter palette, and mixed metals.
So like stainless steel, matte black, brass, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a bit more polished, more contemporary, but it still has that warmth, that charm we associate with farmhouse style. Then there's French farmhouse, sometimes called French country. It takes inspiration from those rural homes in Provence.
So we're talking pastels, pale blue, dusty rose, maybe.
Yes, and often paired with, more ornate furniture, vintage linens, those classic patterns like toil, ticking stripes, florals.
So it's more romantic, a bit more feminine, a touch of European elegance.
Exactly. Elegant and lived in with that sense of history. Now, for those who prefer a bit of an edge, there's industrial farmhouse. Exposed brick, concrete, metal accents, minimal decor.
I'm picturing black barn doors, metal shelving, vintage factory lighting.
You got it. It's blending that warmth of farmhouse with the coolness of industrial elements. And finally, for anyone dreaming of coastal living, there's coastal farmhouse, bringing in those beachy vibes.
So blues, greens, airy woods, those subtle nautical touches, shiplap walls, rope accents, driftwood.
That's the idea. It's all about creating that relaxed, inviting feeling.
So with all these variations, how does someone even start? It feels a bit overwhelming.
Right, like where do you even begin?
That's a good question, and honestly, there's no right or wrong way. The beauty of farmhouse is it's all about personal expression. But there are some tips that can help you get that authentic look.
All right, lay 'em on us. Okay, first, think about repurposing. Salvage doors can become amazing headboards or barn doors. Old church pews can be benches. And barnwood, of course, is perfect for walls, floors, furniture, you name it.
So it's seeing those old materials in a new way, giving them a second life.
Exactly. And these pieces, they often come with a story, which adds to that character.
I love that. So much more meaningful. What else?
Balance is key. Restraint, even. Farmhouse is all about that warmth and coziness, but it can get cluttered easily. The key is to choose pieces carefully. Don't fill every space with stuff.
Less is more, especially with that farmhouse look.
Yeah. It's creating that curated feel, intentional, not just cluttered or overly decorated.
And mixing old and new pieces, that's part of it too, right?
Definitely. Don't be afraid to pair those modern light fixtures with vintage furniture or a sleek sofa with a distressed coffee table. That contrast is what makes it interesting, finding that balance.
It's like a conversation between styles, all within that farmhouse context.
You got it. Speaking of conversation, let's talk texture. Farmhouse is all about layering textures. Think like chunky knit throws on the sofa, baskets full of blankets, a plush rug on top of hardwood.
So it's not just visual, it's how it feels too, that warmth and invitation.
Exactly. It appeals to all the senses.
Okay,
so repurposing, restraint, mixing old and new, layering textures, any other pearls of wisdom.
hit us with them.
Keep it casual. approachable.
Mm.
Farmhouse design is meant to feel lived in, comfortable, not too perfect or untouchable. Think about a farmhouse kitchen. It's for cooking, baking, gathering. It's not a showpiece, it's the heart of the home.
So it's okay for things to be, a little imperfect, a little worn, a little mismatched.
That's what gives it charm. It's embracing the beauty of imperfection. That's what makes it feel real.
Authentic. Now we've talked about the history, but farmhouse is always evolving. What are you seeing in modern farmhouse design? What are some of the trends?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. What's new? What's next? Well, it's fascinating to see how the style adapts. One trend that's really taking off is sustainability.
Oh, that makes sense with the connection to nature and rural living.
Exactly. People are choosing eco-friendly materials, things like locally sourced wood, reclaimed and repurposed elements, non-toxic finishes, energy-efficient appliances.
So it's like taking those traditional values and making them relevant for today.
Exactly. And we're also seeing minimalist farmhouse, paring down the decor, clean lines, open space. It's all about calm and simplicity.
So it's still farmhouse, but without all the stuff.
Right. It's a response to that feeling of being overwhelmed. People want simplicity, peace in their homes. And while we're on trends, let's talk bold accents. It's not always just about neutrals.
No, you're right. I've seen that too.
So you'll see people introducing those dramatic elements like black barn doors or a painted kitchen island. Add some personality without going too far from that classic farmhouse vibe.
Like a modern twist on those familiar elements.
You got it. And finally, there's this trend toward what I'd call refined farmhouse. It's all about using those subtle details, a more curated aesthetic. It elevates the look, but keeps that simplicity.
So we're talking like a single wrought iron light fixture or a vintage rug with a subtle pattern.
Yes. Finding that balance between rustic and refined. So we've gone from the history of farmhouse all the way to its modern adaptations. What are some takeaways for our listeners, someone who wants to bring that farmhouse charm to their own space?
I think it's important to remember that farmhouse style, it's more than just a trend. It's the design philosophy. It's about simplicity, warmth, authenticity. Choosing honest materials, neutral colors, a blend of rustic and modern.
It's not about copying a look, it's about making it your own.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to use vintage finds, layer those textures, and most importantly, let your home tell your story.
Yeah, it's about making it personal, authentic. And I think that's why farmhouse design is so enduring. It's not about chasing trends, it's about a feeling, creating a home that's timeless. I think you've hit it right on the head. Farmhouse design, it celebrates the things that ground us, family, community, a connection to nature, that sense of history. Those values, they never go out of style.
It's funny, we started talking shiplap and beams, but it's so much deeper than that, isn't it?
It really is. It's
Yeah.
about a space that nourishes the soul, makes you feel truly at home.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Before we wrap up, any final thoughts for our listener, someone who's ready to start their own farmhouse design journey?
I'd say embrace the journey. Have fun. Don't be afraid to experiment, mix things up, break the rules if you need to. Let your creativity lead you. Trust your instincts. The most important thing is to create a space that reflects you and brings you joy.
Love that. It's not about perfection, it's about what feels right for you.
Exactly. And remember, the best farmhouse designs are the ones that tell a story. Your story. Let your home reflect the things you love, the memories you hold dear, the values that matter to you.
Beautifully said. Well, I think it's time for us to say goodbye, but I hope this deep dive has left you feeling inspired, ready to create your own little haven of farmhouse charm.
Happy decorating.
And that's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.